This here is the engine to my future dust control system in my workshop. I thought I'd spend a few minutes to show how I put it together. This video may be kind of boring to anybody other than somebody who's thinking of building one themselves. Point worth noting is that the fan and the motor sitting at the top of the cyclone is very heavy. So if you're going to build something like this, you either need a system of supports like an oil derrick, or you need to mount it to a very solid wall. This is mounted to the concrete wall behind it. The cyclone that I have is fairly lightweight. There's a flange at the bottom. I wanted to support the bottom of it, hold it in place just in case something happened to hit it. I wouldn't want it to break or anything. It's supported on the top by the fan motor, which is bolted to the wall. I'm not sure how well you can see it. The fan is mounted to two 2x4s which are glued together. Those 2x4s are basically held to the 2x4s against the wall with long deck screws. And you can see how that all works. The bottom of the cyclone is held by that bracket there, firmly in place. The dust collection bucket on the bottom is just sitting there. It's basically being compressed into its lid. The lid is attached to the bracket that's holding the cyclone. Underneath it is my vertical lift mechanism to press the bucket upward into its lid. From over here we can see how I mounted the filter in the bucket under it. Basically the filter, I have I guess a giant plywood washer or bracket, you might call it. Basically it's a D-shaped piece of plywood with a hole in it for the ductwork to go into. This is rigidly mounted to the wall, basically supported by a couple angle brackets. I think going forward I may put angle brackets also on the top here to add a little more support. The Wind Environmental filter is held in place by compression. There are 3 threaded rods with wing nuts on the top. There's one in the front, and as I come around to this view I think you can see there are 2 in the very back of the D-shaped bracket. If I loosen those rear 2 pieces of threaded rod, I can loosen this front one, and it's in a slot here. So I can remove this piece, and when I do that, these bottom 2 plywood disc brackets will basically fall downward and allow me to remove the Wind Environmental filter without much headache or hassle. The back of this second bracket right here, this is basically just floating, and if I take the front threaded rod out, it's basically going to pivot on those 2 rear supports of the 2 rear threaded rods. If I come down here, you can see the mechanism how I held the bucket in place. The lid of the bucket sits in a rabbet in this second disc. The bottom one, again, is really held in place in 2 ways. In the back there's that rear cleat that has a sloped front to it. So without being able to see much, I'll be able to slide this lowest disc up onto that slope and push it back up against the plywood. So those 2, there's a cleat there and there's one on the other side. Those cleats are holding the rear of this third plywood disc. The front of the plywood disc is held again by 2 lengths of threaded rod in slotted grooves, one on either side. And again, to remove the bucket, all I have to do is loosen those 2 front threaded rods, pull them out of the slots, and the bucket and this lowest disc will fall right out. To hold the bucket firmly into the rabbet, I have these 2 wooden blocks. There's one on either side, and it's basically those wooden blocks that are pushing the bucket up into the mortise in the second disc. So I don't have to worry that this lowest piece of plywood is perfectly flat or parallel to the second one that's sitting at the bottom of the filter. Anyway, I hope this gave some of you guys out there some ideas. I hope it answered some questions you may have. And if you've got any comments or feedback, please let me know. Thank you.